Well, good morning, everybody. This is Reverend Jermaine Alberti. I am the Executive Director of Pathways to Promise, and I want to welcome you to our Engage, Learn, and Network Leadership Forum on today. We have our guest speaker with us, Dr. Vicki Harvey, with the United Church of Christ Mental Health Network. And so we are so excited to learn more about WISE. And I don't like getting into long bios and introductions. I love folks to just tell us what they want us to know about themselves. So what I'm going to do is a couple of things. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to spotlight for everyone Dr. Harvey, so you will see her. And then also I'll bring her PowerPoint up when she's ready for that. And we're going to have about a 30-minute time together where we do about 20 minutes of presentation and about 10 minutes of Q&A. Those things tend to blend together. But our goal is also, after we get done with our presentation, to hear from you or what you're doing around the country with your work. And so we have about an hour together right now. Make that about 54 minutes together. So let's get into it. So Dr. Harvey, welcome to Pathways to Promise. And I would love for you to tell this group that's gathered a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right into your PowerPoint.
Thank you, Reverend Jermaine. So happy to be here with you. I have to tell you the most pertinent thing about me right now is I broke my wrist, and I am selfish with the fact that I have a captive audience of people of faith. In a few hours, I'll be going into a 2-hour surgery on this wrist. And so I'm so happy that the timing did not conflict with this presentation. But if it comes to mind, it comforts me to think of all of you thinking of me. So I am board member with the Mental Health Network for about 3 years now. And let's see, about me, I'm a psychologist. I have 2 foster boys we are about to adopt. They are 14 and 8. And my husband, Chowini, and a couple of cockatiels. Everybody has been secreted away. So hopefully we're not going to be interrupted today. But yeah, I think I'm ready to go ahead and jump into the slide. Get going. Okay, here we are. I found a series of graphics which have roads and outdoors here for our purposes today. And we are talking about a ministry about mental health justice, advocacy, embrace, going into some dark, hard places. And I feel that, often we are entering a big unknown when we take this step. And these, I thought the mountains and the nature really kind of represents that. But as in this slide, there is light and hope and peace with every person and with every congregation who enters into this path with us. And all it takes is an earnest resolve and a pure heart as represented by this child. So this is Becoming Wise, the Journey. Next slide. Our agenda today, I'll have an introduction, history, a little bit of a history of WISE. I'm very happy, but also intimidated. Alan Johnson has joined us, so I feel like I should just turn this over to him, but he'll let me know how things go here. An overview of WISE to date, what we ask of our faith communities, and then our Q&A. Next slide. So I am so elated to be here today with you, sharing the joy I feel about this ministry and this movement. As I say, I am a psychologist. I've been one for about 35 years, and it is extremely meaningful work. Being a partner in the process of helping an individual or a couple or a family find their way through crippling mental health challenges and hopefully begin to thrive. But change in therapy happens in a very small world, often just the therapist and the individual. And it's very private, as it should be. And it often takes place without the wider active support of the person's community. Not always, but either people don't know that someone's involved in that, and it's up to the individual to share, or we often have active resistance to someone being in therapy. Family members can be a little bit worried that they're going to be blamed, and sometimes it actually works against. They not only don't have support in their community, they have resistance. So, and then of course, many people never go to therapy, but they're trapped in the hell of a loneliness that they feel will never end, or a drug dependency, or they're living with a long-term chronic mental health diagnosis and wonder if they can ever be embraced and included in a world of, quote, normal people. In my own immediate family, we experienced a suicide in 2017. It was my daughter who had been abused at age 2 and came to us at age 4. We were a family for 18 years. There was a brokenness that she struggled mightily to overcome. Her brave attempt to find her way in a world that couldn't fathom what reality was like for her. That will always be the highest example of courage that I will ever witness. And I think my husband, her picture's up there on the mantle. I didn't know that. I just saw that behind me. I wonder what difference could have been made by a congregation that discussed the realities of mental health challenges as easily as they discuss the Christmas pageant coming up this year. If she could have grown up seeing people every week unafraid to be in their church community with their own demons and to be openly loved and included. At the very least, she would have been shoulder to shoulder with people who also sometimes wondered how to go on, and to be aware of all the ways that people do, and of the help and care that can surround the person in deep mental pain. I won't know that for Erica, but it has been life-saving for me to work with a dynamic national mental health board. I just get goosebumps every time I talk about this. And all the churches, synagogues, and campus ministries across the nation who are determined that they will speak out, reach out, actively minister, educate, and most of all, embrace anyone who may be in a similar situation. We do know of lives saved because of this outreach. There's nothing more important that you can be involved with, in my humble opinion. It's a beautiful thing to be involved with. I hope you will take this information back to your church or community and consider beginning your own WISE process. Next slide. Okay, I will just speak briefly about our amazing history. I thought this sentence summed it up. Out of tragedy, God spoke and people listened. Next slide. This will just be a quick overview, and there's so many wonderful details about our history I'll have to leave out. In preparation for this, I did speak to Alan Johnson, our board's chair emeritus, and he was our chair for many, many years, and many of you know him. And in our talk, I was amazed to learn of all the early interconnections of our mental health board with Pathways to Promise. The UCC has been participating with Pathways to Promise since 1987. We have greatly benefited from your many resources so generously shared. In fact, it was at a Pathways to Promise conference in 2009 that a group of about 15 to 17 UCC participants just got together in a room afterwards, trying to come up with a practical, personal approach. And practical is the key word here, to mental health needs. Not good intentions, not just talking, but trying to get boots on the ground. Out of this was born the Mental Illness Network, which later became the Mental Health Network. But everything begins with a personal story, and the story of WISE really began 2 years prior in 2007, following a double suicide at Allen's Church in Boulder, Colorado. I believe it was one family, 2 children, a year apart. Because of this devastation and agony, people came together. They began to learn, expand their awareness, brought in, professionals, did a lot of soul searching, and formed a task force. In 2010, the church became A2A and joined forces with the UCC, becoming accessible to all. Eventually, after doing all this work and all of this growing, they knew it was time to form a covenant for the mental health team, the mental health network team they had. So Alan and others sat down and asked, how can we be more welcoming? That was key. And they already had the inclusive part, being A2A. So they had WI on the way here. And then Alan tells me that they had a marketing person on their team who came up with the rest of it. So she added supportive and engaged. So welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged. And it just seemed perfectly right. And this acronym has been our simple but beautiful guide for this ministry ever since. Next slide. This slide was already populated like this, and I thought it must be needing to be left in. It says the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. And that, if that doesn't sum up what WISE is all about, and it was already here in the slide. So Walt Disney, thank you. Next slide. So here we are today. We have 42 faith communities, of which one is a Presbyterian church, and we have 3 synagogues. So we are really reaching out beyond our denomination, beyond Christian faith, beyond all these arbitrary borders, as it should be. We're impacting lives in all places, and people are really interested. We have 3 UCC conferences that are WISE, 2 associations, and a college campus ministry right now is right on the cusp. Next slide. So how did they get there? We hope and ask that everyone begins by going to our website right there, www.mhn-ucc.org. And you will begin by filling out a short survey. And there's a series of blue tabs across the top when you enter the website. One will say WISE certification. Click that. Under that tab, you will see how to begin the WISE process. And there's the survey. This survey notifies us that you are out there. It gets you in our database, and it saves you a lot of time and wasted energy. We've had people doing their own thing. Thank you. It's posted in the chat, it looks like. We've had people doing their own thing, and we take some responsibility for this. Before they ever contact National, they go through a lot of this process, and while that may be okay, we find it not always ends up being in alliance with our values and goals. And so sometimes there has to be some reworking. And so we really want you to come in to National to begin with. And we've made an effort now to make that very clear. I don't think you can even avoid it on the website. And we're spreading the word, and you please help us spread the word too. Check in with us. We want you working early. Once you fill out that survey, You will be assigned a liaison. Often that will be me. And I will follow you through to certification. We next ask that you form a committee. And really, beyond that, we don't have a lot of hard and fast rules. I have on there, I see live with ambiguity. We are the UCC, and as you might know, we allow each church to find its uniqueness, its own special voice, so that the sovereignty and creativity of that community is not squashed by something that a national board imposes upon it. And so that's how we also go about asking you to become wise as well. There is many individual pathways as there are churches or faith communities. We just ask that you do, not just talk, that you go about this deeply and seriously, that you don't ask for a 1, 2, 3 step approach. Don't copy anyone. And that you enter into a deep discernment about what your wise ministry will be based on the needs, resources, and characteristics of your people. So there can be a long period of figuring this out. And I am happy, and our board is happy to be there in the unknown with you. But it does surprise me that often I usually ask for a phone call once the survey has been completed, just to get to know you a little bit. And I'm surprised by, often people are saying, okay, what do I do? What do we do? Let's get going. The committee has told us we want this certificate, a couple of months. What do we need to do? And I really have to put on the brakes. I don't know your church. And so I can't tell you. Some churches there are people in the church that have a lot of resistance to talking about mental health issues. Other churches, that's not an issue whatsoever. If yours does have issues with that, that's a big factor in how you decide to proceed. Churches have open secrets, unwritten rules about, what can be said. And, sometimes it's threatening to suddenly get in there and start this kind of thing. How will you go about addressing all of this? And I can certainly talk to people about that, but, that's just an example of how unique it is for every congregation. Okay, next slide. I often advise downloading a survey that I created for my church. And there it is. It's same row of tabs across the top. You go to the resources tab, leads to congregational toolkits. And in that toolkit, there's a lot of amazing resources. There's something on trauma, I think, on dementia. And down towards the bottom, there's something called an assessment of congregational mental health needs, introduction, and the survey. And this is given anonymously to members of your church. You give the introduction and the survey, and it asks things that no one ever talks about, like depression, anxiety, sleep disorders. And you find that people you have known for years and years, and you see every week. And again, this is anonymous. This will not work if anybody, this is meant for 1 or 2 people to look at in the leadership. But it's often amazing what people are dealing with that they're willing to share in this format that you would never have known about. And often this can help pinpoint where you need to start. You have a blueprint for what your congregation is facing right now in real time. And then you can develop support groups. Oh, before I get into that, you're welcome to change the survey any way you want. This just is what worked for us, that I developed, but you can add, subtract, do whatever you feel as you look at that. You then can develop support groups, bring in speakers, NAMI, mental health first aid, gather resources around your needs. In our church, what crystallized is we discovered that we had many young mothers whose husbands and extended family were off in Asia working. And here they are with infants trying to raise, and they're struggling with language, with jobs, with resources. And we knew that, but we didn't know the anxiety and we hadn't thought about what it was doing for them. So we really, were able to surround them by the fact that they just filled out the survey. And we brought in early childhood intervention. And we also found out the extent at that time of debilitating anxiety people were dealing with regarding the political situation at the time. And then you also include your outside community. What's going on around you? I'm so amazed at what every church does. It's just beautiful. I love this job to be able to see what everybody does. One church developed a pop-up clinic at the edge of an Indian reservation near their campus to help address the mental health struggles and the alcoholism and other issues of their neighbors. So ministering outside of your people, once you take care of your people, is part of WISE. So you start offering these things and you begin to flex your muscles. And as a group, you find that you are becoming mental health aware. You start to know who you are as a potential WISE congregation. Okay, next slide. Okay, at some point, after you've been living this WISE journey, you decide it's time for your covenant. And I wrote there that it's already in you. And I think it will be. It will already be in you. If you've been doing this work, what you want to say in your covenant becomes obvious. Your committee begins to distill the essence and truth behind what you're doing and how it's grounded in your faith, and then to put it into words. And I am amazed at how fully unique each one is, while also, of course, reflecting many of the same sacred principles that bind all of us together. Okay, let's go through what I wrote here. These are some things you want to think about including. Include your church's understanding of the suffering and mental health struggles and exclusion that people face with mental health challenges. Talk about the mandate you experience to act according to the dictates of your faith. What will you do? What have you been doing? When you submit your covenant to your liaison, we will be looking at whether you are caring for those in your congregation as well as the wider community. Whether you are welcoming those with mental health diagnoses into all aspects of your church life, including leadership. We ask that you continue a robust ministry after you receive your certification, and you check in yearly with us to let us know what you are doing. And though we don't have many rules, we did make one. There is a very harmful practice by some Christian leaders and believers called conversion therapy that attempts to change LGBTQIA plus youth and individuals to becoming straight. Doesn't work. It's ridiculous. It's harmful. It's cruel. And we did vote that your church cannot be a proponent of conversion therapy and receive our WISE certification. And I have totally lost track of how I'm doing on time. I do have a covenant to go over with you if there's time, or do we maybe that can be part of Q&A. How am I doing, Reverend Jermaine?
You're doing good. I think we can probably go another 5-10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I do have Kent UCC in Kent, Ohio is a church that was my first church to take through the WISE process solo. And so they did become WISE in January. And I thought I would just go through what they have here. They say they are entering into a wise covenant, welcoming, inclusive, supportive, engaged. It's a holy and sacred promise to God, to each other, and to our community. It is grounded in the perfect love we know God holds for each of us. We are God's beloved children, and through a wise covenant, we proclaim that we are beloved even when we are experiencing mental illness, addiction, or other brain disease. As our Sunday services regularly affirm, we do not come as a perfect people. We are people perfectly loved by God. And then they decided to make this was unique to me. They decided to have each member of this congregation say that I commit to recognizing that mental health is a part of all our lives. This is not an us versus them reality. Further, I recognize the role of our congregation is not to fix situations, but to make referrals and share resources when appropriate, to be present with those experiencing challenges, responding with compassion. I am called to proclaim that we are loved by our Almighty and our all vulnerable God, and accepted for exactly who we are, no exceptions. I do not believe that our identity is rooted in any diagnosis, addiction, or mental health challenge, but rather as the beloved children of God. I commit to extending radical belonging to all and accept each other just as we are, honoring our lived experiences. I commit to holding sacred and safe space and accompany one another and our families through experiences of the pain and despair of mental illness, addiction, and other disease. Creating a stigma-free, judgment-free, and shame-free environment. Choosing words that are life-giving and not stigmatizing labels. Affirming our humanity instead of creating more boundaries. Educating myself and our wider community to better understanding mental health, substance use disorders, neurodevelopmental differences, and other brain disease. To companion our children, youth, and elderly. Listen without judgment to their stories of mental disease, whether personal or within their families and among their friends. Recognize particular needs in certain seasons of our lives. This church had youth on their WISE committee, which I thought was amazing and wonderful. To recruit, nominate, and support persons in mental health and addiction recovery to serve on ministry teams and in leadership positions within the congregation. Being open to calling clergy and hiring staff in recovery from mental health, addiction, or brain disease challenges. I also commit to the mission of our congregation to maintain appropriate contact, support members who become incarcerated or hospitalized because of episodes of mental illness and behaviors due to addiction. Form strategic partnerships with mental health and addiction recovery agencies and professionals, the LGBTQIA community, racial justice organizations, social support agencies to join in advocacy for justice and treatment and support. To invite and encourage support and recovery organizations to use our building facilities. To maintain clear and healthy boundaries for the well-being of the congregation and the community. To hold ourselves true to this covenant by convening a team to review our WISE actions each January. This includes evaluating our areas of strength and identifying areas needing more resources. Proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ for all who are part of our community so that everyone knows they are loved and accepted by God just as they are. We, the Congregation of Kent United Church of Christ, pledge to uphold this covenant in our personal lives, as well as in the actions of our church family, and to prayerfully seek God's guidance in building a welcoming, inclusive, supportive, and engaged community. They really walk the walk. They had people that were very courageous, that were living with a lot of mental health challenges, speak to the church, and they just got right out there and made it real. And so once this happens, your liaison knows everything you've been doing. It's very quick. Your certificate is granted. It's sent to you. We have a couple of other celebratory things. I won't ruin the surprise that happen, but we all have bells on as the entire mental health board celebrates another faith community becoming part of our ministry. And so I thank you for your interest, for your heart, for this critical, beautiful ministry, and thank you in advance for what I hope you're going to do with it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Vicki. If you all want to give some reactions with some thumbs up, some applause, however you like to do that virtually, thank you so much for presenting. We have about 24 minutes left before we hit our 9:30 my time mark. It's actually Central Time, about 11:06 here. So let's go ahead and open the door for some questions for Dr. Vicki, and then I would like to spend at least 15 minutes in you all reporting out what you're doing around the country. So any questions for Dr. Vicki, feel free to unmute yourself and ask that question. You can put it in the chat feed. I'm happy to answer it, read it from there. So any questions? So what would WISE look like on a college campus is a question, Dr. Vicki.
Yeah, so one of the challenges with the college campus, of course, is that the community is always shifting and changing. And so it really helps to have a sort of an anchor somehow as part of that college community. And I think we're looking at Champaign-Urbana in Illinois. They have a church that I think what they're doing is they have some of their staff are assisting with being part of the college ministry, so that you don't develop this covenant and then have everybody graduate and there's no anchor. So that's one thing. Other than that, it's a college campus is an amazing place, right? I mean, you're right in the heart of individuals going through so much, and you've got peers right there that they are going to reach out to. So we just do the same thing, basically. What can you do? We have the leader of that campus ministry was just on fire, and he developed all kinds of programs. The problem is, you have to delegate, right? You have to get people. You can't do it all yourself. He was getting burned out for a while. But developing whatever meets the needs, suicidality, drug use, trying to develop resources. It's very much the same, actually.
A couple more questions. How does the WISE process work for associations and conferences? And another question is, if I'm not a member of the UCC Church, is this program just within the UCC? I think the answer to that question is no, it's not. But go ahead, Dr. Vicki, talk about the association and conferences, please.
Okay, yes. I did not actually certify any conference or association, but I believe you just take it on a wider level. So, a conference or association can take, look at what they can do for a group of churches, or how can they get churches to partner with each other so they can take their leadership and their resources and just turn, what we would do in an individual church into what you would do as a larger group, and for your state, for your entire conference. And you have more resources. So you can set up more programs that that bring a lot of faith communities together in a way that individual church can't. But the heart of what you put in your covenant is still very much the same. And yes, we are so thrilled that other faith communities are out there asking to become wise. And let's see, what was the congregation? Rodef Shalom just became wise in I think it's in Colorado. I forget if it's Boulder or Denver. And they incorporated a lot of their Jewish terminology that I couldn't even follow, but it was just a delight to work with these people, and they're so passionate, and they just bring it into their own way of processing it. It was very seamless. It was wonderful.
We have about 4 more minutes left before we go into our opportunity for you all to report what you're doing. I think you've answered a question that came up with regards to, can we edit the resources to fit a denomination that's not UCC? And it seems as if what you just described was that this synagogue was able to do that, was to fit the resource to speak to its community.
Yes, when you fill out the survey there, it's tailored for UCC, and I just say, just ignore anything that doesn't fit for you. If you don't have, it asks if you are, what conference are you part of? If you're not UCC, you just leave all that out. We're not trying to shoehorn you into anything that is not that does not work for you. It's all about what you can do for the mental health community. So we're very adaptable.
All right, so a few more minutes left for questions. Let's see, is the presentation available to participants? Is this presentation available to participants? Yes, we will have this on our website. So we'll get this loaded today, being Wednesday. Our hope is to have it loaded by Friday. So we will also send an email to everybody who participated in this webinar with that link. So yes, this will be available for you all afterwards. All right, Alan Johnson states that he celebrates the persistent passion of Vicki in encouraging the wise process.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Well, let's go ahead.
Oh, there's a class there. Okay, I see.
So what's happening in this chat feed is the beautiful thing about these engage, learn, and network leadership forums. There's stuff going on around the country that people don't know about, and this is an opportunity for folks to share. So Ron just shared that the Maine School of Ministry is currently offering a spring semester class entitled Ministry, Mental Health, and the Church, and that he's happy to share the syllabus if you want him to share that. So his email is there in that chat feed, so feel free to reach out to Dr. Ron to get that syllabus. Also in the chat feed, Mary shared that the Interfaith Community Services in the County of San Diego, HHSA, offer 16 hours of training on faith and mental health for those in faith communities. And she also has her information there in the chat feed. So there's her number as well as her email address. We will capture these things in the text feed, and we'll send those out also as part of our follow-up email to you all. But this is the beautiful thing about this leadership forum. You can share what you're doing around the country and see that, hey, you're not alone. Because some of us feel like Elijah in the cave. Am I the only one doing this work? And the answer is no. There are others out there who is doing this great work. So we are really excited about WISE, and we want to thank Dr. Vicki, you coming and sharing with us the model. As you mentioned earlier, Pathways to Promise and UCC have been friends for a very long time, and we are so grateful for this partnership. And Rosemary Graham says, that she loves the process and format of the ministry and hopes to help churches become more wise. We also have somebody all the way from Canada. Anne Marie Moeller has joined us from Canada, and she's a faith community nurse and on the board of the Inner Church Health Ministries of Canada. I've already emailed Anne and said, email me, let's talk. But I would encourage some of you all, if you are interested in what's going on in Canada, to do the same. So, Anne, if you would like to share your information with us, that could be great. We always are great interest in learning what's going on in other countries with regards to mental health. So please feel free to share with the larger group if you like to the work that you're doing there. I see a friend of mine's who we haven't talked to in a very long time, but Daphne Walker Thoth is on with us. Daphne was actually doing great work in St. Louis around mental health. And so it's good to see her here. Anyone else want to share? All right, Anne has placed her email in the chat feed. Angel is asking, is there anyone here in Tampa, Florida area? So if you are on the call and you're in Tampa, Florida, connect with Angel. She would love to connect with you. If you would like to schedule a time to chat with me, I'm going to put my email address in the chat feed. All right, jalberty@pathwaysofpromise.org. And also, if you want to, feel free to go to the pathwaysofpromise.org website. And you can also schedule a time for us to talk just by going to the website page, contact us, and I'll do a one-on-one with you to talk about what you're doing. Anyone else want to share what you're doing around the country with this group? All right, great. Yeah. I'm also a national trainer of mental health first aid. So Anne talked about holding a workshop for congregants in mental health first aid. I'm always interested in talking to anybody who is a mental health first aid instructor and wants to talk about tips of how to integrate mental health first aid and faith and spiritual community. So I'm always happy to chat with people about how to go about doing that. Well, I tell you, in these Zoom meetings, silence is one of those things where you don't know if folks are just thinking or if they're like, okay, I'm done. So I'm always happy to give folks back the gift of time. That's a wonderful gift to give back to persons. So there is a website that Anne has posted, ichm.ca, and there you can join the community forum. And it is free. And great for networking. Carol says that their church just started a call to care ministry and will be putting together mental health first aid kits to develop and distribute. Thank you for sharing, Carol. And Rosemary Graham is a mental health coach within the AACC. Rosemary, what does AACC stand for?
American Association of Christian Counselors.
All right, there we go.
They actually have a training, the AACC.net with Mental Health Gateway have a free training to become a board certified mental health coach, and it's specifically for churches.
Oh, great. We will once again, as I said, we will be including these different resources in our email. A board member and a friend of ours, Reverend Dr. Sarah Lunn of UCC, is working on a new book with regards to youth and mental health coming out in April. Thank you, Ron, for sharing that. Dr. Lunn has a lot of great resources, books, and I promote a lot of her work. So thank you for sharing that, Ron. Susan is a United Methodist from Long Island, New York, and find mental health first aid training expensive. Can be. Most definitely. But Susan, reach out to me. Let's talk about how we can make that happen. Because we can do it virtually now from around anywhere in the country. So reach out to me. Let's talk about how we can make that happen. Everybody, let's send our prayers and our thoughts for Dr. Vicki for successful surgery. Thank you, Barbara, for putting that in the chat feed there. So we pray that your surgery goes well. And in the chat feed is a mental health first aid kit that was loaded there. So I encourage you to download that, what you can put in a first aid kit to help a person. That's a great idea. It looks like, let's see, Wilson Emmanuel United Church in Portland, Maine is in the early Y stages. Congratulations. And Angel, I would love to talk with you about mental health first aid training. Sanctuary Mental Health in British Columbia, Canada. It has great resources and speakers also. I don't know about you, but hopefully you can see the magic happening in this chat feed with all these wonderful resources just churning there. So great to see these. Yeah, mental health first aid, depending on if it's grant funded, can be offered free or at no cost in some communities. So sometimes it's just finding out what instructors can offer it at no cost to individuals. Well, Alan, it is so good just to see your name here. So I pray you are doing well. And everyone else, if this is your first time joining us, most definitely we encourage you to join us for future webinars and forums. And Diane has mentioned that Region 5 provides mental health first aid. And Sarah Lunn will be virtually presenting a sermon and conversation about mental illness on Sunday, May 1st, 9:30 a.m., 11 a.m. Mountain Time. And she will be addressing her new book then also. So if you are not receiving the Interfaith Network on mental illness, go to the website to sign up, and the website is right there. So Angel, thank you so much for joining us your first time. And we do these every other month. So our next one will be done in May. And we will send out a notice to everyone who was part here today. As well as if you want to join our mailing list, please join our mailing list. If you are not on there and you got this from someone else, please feel free to join our mailing list. Well, I'm going to give you back the gift of time. I can give you back 7 minutes of your day. Please use it however you see fit to. And have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody.